It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. You can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting by emailing me at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Really excited about today's show and today's topic. I'm going to be talking about Christopher Dorner, a really underreported story, which is just so complicated. Our guest today is Joe Duncan. You can find him on Medium at joemduncan.medium.com. You can find him at Twitter, too, as well, at Joe M. Duncan, and it's Duncan. Also, he was in a documentary about this Christopher Dorner story called Sins of the City. Mr. Duncan, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you?
I'm very good. Boy, you sound great. You sound really good there. Okay. Before we get into this whole story about Christopher Duncan, though, tell us about Christopher Dorner. Tell us about yourself. Who is Joe Duncan?
I am a writer, journalist, aspiring author, if I can ever get a novel done, from Los Angeles, California. I now live in Orlando, Florida, and I spend most of my time creating interesting content. And while true crime isn't my only wheelhouse, it's not the only thing I write about. I do like to explore interesting stories, and I feel that the Dorner story was not very well explored by a lot of the media and a lot of the documentaries even that I've seen, and things like that. So I feel like it's a conversation that should probably be had. And so, yeah, a few years ago, I wrote a piece about it, and since then I've been kind of talking about Dorner here and there. And, that's the story, man.
Yeah, like you said, this is about the anniversary of it. And it's funny you mentioned Orlando, because while we were off the air getting our audio set up, I was sitting here applying for Orlando Film Festivals and Orlando Crime Con coming up to cover those events.
Oh,
yeah. But what a coincidence, right? Just happened to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so
right on top of the coincidence that it just so happens that this week is actually the 10-year anniversary of Dorner's crimes and the manhunt and all of that.
So tell us, who was Christopher Dorner? Tell us before he went, all the wildness went on. What kind of guy was he? Who was he?
Christopher Dorner, as a young man, he's one of those people that baffle me, because when he was a kid, he knew he wanted to be a police officer. He knew he wanted to be in the military. He's one of those people who just knew he had a life's purpose, and he knew what it was from a very young age. I was not like that. I made a lot of mistakes. I went through and tried different things, and it took me a while to find my niche. And, so he grew up in Southern California. He went to Cypress High School in Cypress, California. It's basically the Los Angeles area, down in Orange County and that whole area. He ended up going to college in Utah, and he got a major in political science and a minor in psychology. Then he went to the military, where he became an expert marksman, and and he learned how to use and use weapons and basically survive all sorts of conditions as a Navy reservist.
Yeah, it seemed like he had some kind of extra special training, as far as combat and stuff.
Yeah, I know he was basically like top of his class in terms of shooting a rifle and I believe a handgun as well. So I know that he received the Navy Rifle Marksmanship Ribbon and the Navy Pistol Shot Ribbon.
Now, what do we know about his personal life? Dating, married? What do we know about his personal life?
Not much. He was kind of that one-track personality. He was very much into his what he considered to be his life's purpose. And that was his thing. He really wanted to be a cop his entire life, and he eventually made it to the LAPD. And that's kind of, he was there for a few years, and that's when things suddenly went very wrong when he was let go by the LAPD under some circumstances that he disagreed with strongly.
Yeah, before we get to that, though, like from your article, the only place I learned this was he went to an all-white high school or middle school where he was bullied.
That's how he interpreted it. He felt that that the bullying he received was due to racism, which isn't really that hard to fathom. I mean, that's a very plausible and understandable feeling to have. So he was bullied a lot when he was a kid, and yeah, it was predominantly white. And I do believe that pretty sure the source that I read said he felt that it was all white or almost exclusively white. Let me see really quick. Yeah, so racism was, lingering in the background of Dorner's story the entire time. He grew up, during the era of Body Count, Ice-T's band that he had for a while, and, NWA, and there was a lot of racial tensions going on in Southern California. The Rodney King story, happened. I was actually there for that. Back in Los Angeles, and then the subsequent riots and all of that. So it was sort of in the air. It was sort of everywhere in Southern California. It was on everybody's minds, especially after they let the police officers off in the beating of Rodney King. So he graduated high school in 1997. So the Rodney King incident was 1991. So that, he was just coming of age right then and there when all of those things were happening. And it was a time of very much racial and political unrest in Southern California.
Right, and the issues when he was on the job, when he was on the police and LAPD, that he believed was a racial initiated, motivated incident. The kicking of
Correct.
that autistic man, I believe he was, or disturbed man.
Yeah, it was schizophrenic.
Okay.
Yeah, so just to back up a little bit. Yes, in high school he did attend a religious school. His parents wanted him to attend it, and they felt that he would get the best education that way, which I think eventually helped him later in life with credentials wise. But he did find himself the only African American student. So on top of living in a Southern California that's already very racially charged, he finds himself the only black guy in this religious school, and then it's definitely not hard to fathom that there was some racial profiling, racial discrimination, and racial bullying that took place there. And he would later say the same thing happened throughout his military career and the police career. So while he was in the Navy, he felt the same way, and obviously in the LAPD he felt the same way. But he didn't just feel that it was racism towards him in the LAPD. He felt it was towards, him and the black community at large. So, you add all this up, there was all of these components of, that undercurrent of racial tension there. And it was marked when he was in the Navy. They jotted down that they believed that he, would sometimes imagine himself, being a victim of circumstances when they didn't feel he was. So, from the beginning, I'd imagine the same thing in his high school as well. You get these two stories. You get, Christopher Dorner's story, which is, okay, this racism is happening, this bullying is happening, and then you have, the institution story, whether it's his religious school or his, the military or the LAPD, and their story is, stop complaining, what's the matter? There's nothing wrong. You're just making yourself into a victim. And I feel like this narrative is, it's very present in America even today. Maybe now more than ever. That there's these, you have this series of institutions and sometimes people who say, no, we are being harmed by this institution, and the institution says, no, you're not, and they deny it. So
now, Joe Duncan, let me ask you a question. Does Christopher Dorner have any family members or close friends or ex-girlfriends or anybody that has spoken out on his behalf and described what he was really like?
Not that I remember.
Right? See,
to
nobody.
be honest with you, So the research that I've done was maybe 5-6 years ago. So, but not that I remember. The only thing that I remember was people from the military. The people from the military basically talking about how he was an expert marksman, and I think one person said that he could be dramatic, and that was about the extent of what we saw.
Yeah,
or heard.
I always find it suspicious when nobody on the positive end is given a platform to speak about an event. I mean, you only hear from one side. Describe to us, what was that incident with the schizophrenic that started this whole ball rolling?
Yeah, absolutely. If I can just back up a second, that's precisely why I wanted to write the piece that I wrote, and that's precisely why I have kind of continued, to talk about the Dorner story, is because, it seems like I remember it happening. I remember everything unfolding live, and I'm sitting there thinking, like, this is like not the entire story.
Right.
And so I wanted to try to dig and see what I could get. So basically, when Christopher Dorner was in the LAPD after he'd left the Navy, starting in 2005, he was partnered with his superior police officer named Teresa Evans. And Teresa Evans was in charge of training Dorner and showing him the ropes of the LAPD. So he finally had got his lifelong dream. This was everything to him since he was, I think, 5 years old. Definitely since he was a small child. And then at some point, Dorner and Evans were called upon a scene of a disturbance in L.A. of a guy named Christopher Gettler, and he was a schizophrenic man. The events aren't exactly 100% clear what happened that day because we have different stories. Dorner later filed a case with the police for an investigation saying that Evans had kicked the schizophrenic man in the face. And that he was handcuffed when his superior officer did this. He suggested, of course, that it was racially motivated and, this was police brutality. Evans and 3 other officers denied the event. So, there's that, the idea of the blue line and cops stick together that we've heard time and again throughout the country. We've heard people say it over and over and over again that cops will stick together, even if it means lying to save one another's skins. And so it really raises a lot of questions. Was Dorner telling the truth, or was he just disgruntled everywhere he went and one of those people who are just this enigma of like chaos and disgruntledness? But so you have these two stories again yet present, and so in response to this, the LAPD conducted a review, and then they fired him, claiming that it was for poor performance on the job.
Mm-hmm. Right. So then, was there a lawsuit? Did he file a lawsuit against LAPD?
I believe he did. He did an appeal, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he filed an actual lawsuit. I think he kind of just went straight militant with it, to be honest with you.
Right. So then it was a series of instantaneous attacks. Why don't you describe those to us?
Well, he decided basically that this was it. And I think, to step into his mind state, it seems like he probably suffered a breakdown. You work for something your entire life, and then you finally get it after decades, a couple of decades working towards this one thing, going through the military, and then you finally get there, and then you're forced to make a decision between what you think is right, police brutality and racism, standing up to it, or your own job. And he chose to to stand up for someone who he believed was kicked in the face while handcuffed on the ground. And he got fired for it. So his whole world must have been crumbling. So at the time, he must have been very, very angry. It all started with him. He took a care package with complaints, and he sent it to Anderson Cooper at CNN, the CNN host. And then he released a 11,000-word manifesto online his first, that's when he started the killing. His first killings were actually not even related to his case. So which I don't know. I mean, it's not a good situation at all.
Well, I believe that the first victim was the daughter of his lawyer.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. Right. So like it wasn't his lawyer himself. It was Monica Quan and her boyfriend Keith Lawrence, and they were sitting in a car, and he ambushed them and shot them pretty much at point blank range, armed to the teeth. Mm-hmm. And after he had sent the care package to Anderson Cooper, which had, I believe it had a coin that's used by marksmen to how well you could shoot at the coin. And he sent one of those that had been shot to Anderson Cooper with, some writings and things of what his intentions were. And his intentions were to get back at the LAPD and everybody who was involved in some way, shape, or form. And that's why I've mentioned that it's not it's strange that he went for somebody's daughter. Mm-hmm. That's kind of if getting revenge against somebody is one thing, but going after somebody's kids who had nothing to do with the situation.
Well, wait, but Joe Duncan, do we know that? Do we know that she was not involved in some possible way? Because we really don't know anything.
This is true. You have a good point here. But
it's a good question. Why pick this kid?
She didn't work for the LAPD. I think he explicitly stated that he was going to go after the family members. Mm-hmm. So of his lawyer. So that's I mean that I think that kind of really turned a lot of people off to his message. But nonetheless, his message was that the LAPD was corrupt, top to bottom. That police brutality was everywhere, and that they were covering it up. And his manifesto was basically like, I am going to strike back at the police for all that they've done to me and all that they've done to other people. Those were the first murders with Monica Quan and Keith Lawrence. And that's when people started to take him seriously. There was a care package in the manifesto, but, once you end up with a couple dead people, and I remember early on during the manhunt, they didn't know who it was still. Like, they hadn't put two and two together. I think it was once they got, a lot of people will remember that photo, that CCTV photo of him looking up. It's black and white. And, that's actually right after he was dumping the guns that he had used to kill Monica Quan and Keith Lawrence into a dumpster. And that's what that CCTV caught. Then it was off to the races.
That's one way to put it, right? Okay, what was the next set of killings?
So then on the 17th of February, 7th of February 2013, excuse me, a truck pulled up on a police car. The police car was waiting at a stoplight. The driver of the truck pulled out a rifle and just opened fire, shooting the two officers inside. Michael Crane was one of the officers. He ended up dying. And the other officer was wounded, shot in both arms. And that's when they put out an APB on Dorner and his truck. And I think this is, remembering it as watching it unfold, I think this is where most of the people that I knew tuned in. That's when it became 24/7 on everybody's news channels that there was a manhunt going on. And so they put out an APB for 4 counties: Orange County, which is just south of Los Angeles, Riverside County, and San Bernardino County. And then, at that point, it was like, kicking a hornet's nest. The cops just came out in full force. And so that was the first set of killings on the 7th.
That was on the 7th, you said?
Yeah, February 7th.
Now, that's interesting, because let me jump in for a second, because we were talking off the air. On February 8th is when the search expanded to Las Vegas, where he owned a home in Rhodes Ranch. And I was telling you off the air, and I told this story Friday night, that I saw that day. I watched the whole thing. It was like live on TV in Las Vegas, in Nevada, when I lived in Nevada. And what happened was the cops took over that whole neighborhood there in Rhodes Ranch, this whole street, and they made everybody stay in their homes. Then they drove like a truck or something, or a tank, into his garage door, knocked that down. And then they shot up into holes through the walls of this house and in the windows of this house, the size of beer cans. These were some kind of projectiles that were the size of beer cans, and you could see the holes. And you used to be able to find those images on a Google search. If you Google Rhodes Ranch, Christopher Dorner, you'd see a picture of that house. They're gone off the internet now. But
Right.
the most traumatic thing of that day was that as the kids, the little school children, were getting off the school bus, the parents were not allowed to come pick them up. They were escorted by rifle-toting, vest-wearing, military gear, cops that took over that neighborhood at a time when they had already boarded up the house. So they knew he wasn't in that house. Just a bizarre, one of the most strangest things I've ever experienced. I've talked about it when it happened, and I've talked about it more recently, and that's why I've always wanted to do a show about Donner.
Yeah, we were discussing that, and I honestly had granted, again, this was 5 or 6 years ago that I did all of the thorough research for this article I wrote, but I did not see anything on it, so it didn't turn up in my, and that is kind of, it's questionable. It's, why is that? It makes you wonder. It also makes you wonder, why do they just so ruthlessly go in and start shooting up somebody's house when,
Right.
he could have had a girlfriend in there. He could have had, he could have had his, family over or something. Somebody else could have been staying there. Well, you said it was, but still, the idea is the same, especially when it comes to, the incidents that were really about to unfold that truly made this story mind-boggling. And that's when the cops decided to start striking back. And they were basically on the manhunt and shooting at anything that looked like Dorner's truck, even remotely, even if it was a different model and a different color. So they ended up shooting quite a few innocent people in response to his killing of cops.
Yeah, I think that blue truck, that blue pickup truck, I think it had 2 women in it. And it was shot up like 72 times, something like that?
No, more than that. It was over 100 times. Yeah. And the women initially, they were offered, it was some ridiculously low amount, but they ended it, as a settlement, and they were like, no, we're going to take this to trial. And then they ended up settling for, I believe, 1.5 million, 1.3 or 1.5 million. But yeah, it's just absurd that the cops, you know what I mean? Because his truck was Nissan, it was a gray Nissan, and the one they ended up shooting was blue. It was like light kind of blue. So not even like a dark midnight blue that could pass for gray. Like this is like a cornflower blue, lighter than Dodger blue.
Now, what was the reason though? Like this was a street that he was seen on or something like that, or lived on?
Well, the 2 women inside were actually employees of the Los Angeles Times. And the cops had locked down the streets of, very, very prominent LAPD officials, not the beat cops. And so, the LA Times women were, they were delivering newspapers. So it was about 5:30 a.m. and they're driving down the street with their lights off, and they're, tossing these newspapers out the window. And then all of a sudden the police just opened fire on them.
Okay, but they were employed by you said the LA Times as newspaper delivery people or reporters?
Newspaper delivery people. So they were tossing newspapers out on everybody's driveway.
Okay, so just so you know, it's an old PI trick, right? What you do is you go down to the supermarket and you get a bunch of those free newspapers, you put a rubber band around them, and then when you're driving through a neighborhood and you don't want to drive through slow in the morning, I'd say 5 a.m. in the morning to go steal someone's trash or something, you toss those things out the window onto people's lawns, and there's just a paper guy. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. It's a nice little cover there. Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So they shot up these 2 poor ladies delivering newspapers.
Yeah.
What happens next? Next is Bear Mountain?
No, not yet. So there was let's see. Oh yes, the innocent women, and yes. So I just want to hold on for a second, because this moment where the police shot at that truck, it really, in a sense, confirms what he was saying, right? So you have a guy who's saying, the police are out here just brutalizing people, and so I'm going to strike back, and I'm going to, do something horrific. and murder a couple people and then murder, one cop and severely wound the other. And then, in response to that, the police shoot up a truck full of innocent people, with two innocent young women. I mean, you got two young women who don't match the description of this guy, who's, a very large man, and, he's him when you see Christopher Dorner. And the truck isn't even the same color. And so it's like the things that he was accusing them of, they became. And I think I remember at this point, that's when you saw a lot of people really start to sympathize with Dorner, and it became this odd kind of, I don't know, it was like a sport. People were cheering, and you had like one side of the internet like, yeah, go Chris Dorner, and the other side like, go police, get this guy. And I remember feeling so conflicted, like, this is just not an easy, there's no cut and dry, okay, good guy, bad guy. Like, it doesn't work like that. From there, they took it, that's when he fled to the woods. And then there was reports of seeing him everywhere. Somebody matching his description was looking for scuba gear in San Diego. So they, sent a bunch of cops down there. The search went all the way to Mexico. Into Mexico, where somebody thought they saw Christopher Dorner. They thought he was going to scuba dive to Mexico, or he had scuba dived to Mexico. They thought there were sightings of him, at the border, and then a Lowe's store in Northridge, a town right there in the greater Los Angeles, had to get shut down because somebody called in and said that they saw him there. So they didn't know where he was, but he was making his way up to Big Bear Mountain out in the woods. Which is a little bit east of Los Angeles. I believe it's about 80 miles. Since it was February, it was freezing. I mean, it was cold. The temperature was really cold. And snow was everywhere. And so it was a manhunt. It was a crazy manhunt.
Yeah, I remember that. Now that you mentioned all those sightings that they had, right? And this was before smartphones. It was a lot more difficult to track people down, not like it is today.
Right, and I remember that was the first time, I'm not sure if you remember this, they employed drones. No police in America had ever deployed drones for a manhunt until Christopher Dorner. They sent drones throughout Big Bear. They sent drones to down towards the southern border to see if he was making his way towards Mexico. Basically anywhere from Los Angeles to Mexico was fair game, and they were using unmanned aerial devices to try to look for this guy.
Do we know if he had any kind of connection to Big Bear?
I do not. I just, in my estimation, it was probably the best place for him to hide out. And I think he understood that the snow, because, Big Bear is really high elevation, so you get a lot of snow where you're not going to have snow in Los Angeles and Orange County. So the snow is going to make a search difficult. So that was my estimation, but I'm not sure if you have any other information on that.
No, I don't. I know there's a lot of cabins available up there. I know that. So then he drives over to Big Bear and he burns his own truck, right?
I believe he crashed it first. I think that was what they were believing. So he's driving up the Big Bear Mountain, he crashes it, and at that point he decided to burn out the truck, I guess, to get rid of all the evidence and things like that. So then he was kind of stuck up in the woods with no transportation, and that's when he tied up. I don't know if you remember that he tied up that couple. There was a kind of elderly couple who had a vacation cabin up there, and they were there visiting, and he entered the cabin armed to the teeth. I mean, I believe he had a Barrett 50 caliber. He had a AR-15s and, just a flurry of handguns, and armed to the teeth comes in there and says, I'm not here to hurt you. My problem is with the cops. I'm sorry, but I need food and your vehicle. And he tied them up, put pillowcases over their heads. And eventually they were able to wrestle free, and that's when they went and called the cops. And the cops then knew for sure that he was probably in Big Bear.
Now that's interesting. He crashes the car. Go ahead.
On top of that, they knew, since he's stolen their make and model, the car, they knew the make and model of the car that he was then driving. So that was probably what led them to finally figure out where he was.
Well, let me ask you this, though. For burning out his own car, Pretty much, it's not like they don't know who he is. You know what I mean? Like what kind of evidence? He's going down fighting. You know, he's not worried about a trial. What would be his motive for burning the evidence in that truck, as opposed to the police burning the evidence in that truck?
Right. It's not like he's trying to get away with a crime, I don't think. The only thing that I can sense is that, the only reason it makes sense to me, I mean, very good question. The only reason it makes sense to me is because he, there could be evidence to where he's going or where he's thinking about going. And you know what I mean? But that's pure hypothesis. I have no idea what he was thinking when he did that.
Gotcha. And also, too, this couple he runs across, if he's such a bloodthirsty killer, why didn't he kill him? And no witnesses. They won't call the police and turn in what kind of car I just stole from them, right?
They were adamant. They were not the only ones, too. They were adamant that he was not going to hurt them. Like you can see the video interviews that they said, he was not going to hurt us. There was actually another gentleman. He carjacked a guy named Rick Helterbrake, and he basically just Grand Theft Auto style carjacked him. So Rick Helterbrake owns a big lot of land out there in Big Bear, and he's driving, and Dorner, I guess, had crashed a different car, the second car that he had taken from the couple, and he came up to him, armed with what Helterbrake thought was an AR-15. And said, get out. I'm sorry, but, I'm not here to hurt you, but, I need your truck. And so Helterbrake stepped out of the truck. Dorner took the truck. Helterbrake took off walking. And he, too, was also adamant that he didn't feel any fear being in Dorner's presence. And that Dorner was very, very explicit in his desire to not harm him. He said, I'm after cops.
I wonder why he was crashing every car he got into.
Yeah, it makes me wonder.
It just wasn't a good driver. Okay.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. How is that possible? You know what I mean? Like, that's the really bad luck to crash multiple cars like that back to back. And it wasn't like they were like hot on his tail. They were still looking for him, so they didn't know where he was.
Yeah, very strange. Well, this story is so strange in so many different ways. Now, are you familiar with the silencer he purchased in Nevada? That story about he used some kind of phony paperwork to get it?
I do not know that story.
It was in the manifesto.
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, this has been 5-6 years, so retain all 11,000 words of that. But go ahead. What I remember distinctly is the police officers were when the last standoff happened, where he took his final stand. They were terrified because that silencer or suppressor, whichever it was, they couldn't hear the actual shots. They could only just hear the thuds of bullets in the whizzing overhead. Is what they said. Go ahead, though. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. And because that gun store was right by my house in Henderson, and I forget the name of it. Some shot, and somehow he went in there with like a paperwork for a trust or something like that, and he was able to use the trust to purchase the silencer where he was not capable to legally purchase that silencer. It was some kind of legal loophole. If people want to, we'll post the manifesto along with this when we put this up online. If people want to go further on that and take a look at that, because I believe they're still doing that, over there at that particular gun store. Not to make any allegations, but I got to get the feeling still going on. Now, another thing with this manifesto, too, a huge portion of it was just him describing his feelings about different people that he ran across in his life. It was 11,000 words. He kind of went all on that. He went down, how he felt about different people, about different institutions. I think he even at one point said, I'm going to give you a reason to enact gun control or something to the effect of that. Right. Yeah. I remember that now too. Yeah. Now, okay, he's up there in Big Bear. How did they find that house? By following the car? The cabin.
Yeah. They were following it down. I think the aerial support kind of clued them into where he was. He came out, and I think somebody had seen him and pointed out the cabin to where he was. And then, the police were en route, and a couple of, I think it was actually not police who got there first. I think it was park services because that's like a park area where he was in. So that was obviously an unfair fight, and so some shooting began, and then the first cops on the scene, they were both hit too. One of them was killed, and the other one was severely wounded. He was shot in the face. In doing the documentary, I spoke with the producer of the documentary who'd spoken to that surviving officer who'd been shot in the jaw and I think twice in the chest by Dorner, and he just remembered that blazing heat from that, and so then it just turned into a firefight. Hundreds, if not thousands, of rounds were fired back and forth from the rest of the cops who had then come to support those initial officers, and Dorner, who was now holed up in a cabin in Big Bear.
Now, I believe the official story, because this cabin burned to the ground, okay? And I believe the official story is that they fired a tear gas canister near the place or in the place, and another officer just happened to shoot that canister. That's what started this fire. Is that the official story?
That is still the official story to this day. That it was a tear gas canister that caught the cabin on fire. There was a lot of very, very strange circumstances around this story. Around what happened up there in the mountains, right? Like, a guy crashes two cars and then his cabin catches on fire. And this is after they didn't just shoot up one innocent truck with two innocent women. They shot up another. They shot up a different. They shot up actually two trucks that they had thought was Christopher Dorner's back in Orange County, California. So yeah, I think that at that point there was a lot of trigger happy cops, and I think that they were ready to put a bullet in him whatever way possible. But it seems like there was a lot of motive for there to be a lot of anger on the police department side, understandably so. But that is strange. Why would you crash two cars and and end up getting burned alive in a cabin? Well, I guess technically he shot himself. That's what they said. But get burned alive in a cabin, because of a tear gas grenade.
Yeah, very similar to the Patty Hearst, the SLA standoff, where they shot up live on TV, shooting up the joint, and then let it burn to the ground. Very interesting. And now, was there ever an overall investigation into his original claims and these several incidents? I know you said there was a lawsuit with those women with the LA Times, but was there ever like a committee panel formed?
They didn't reopen they didn't take a second look at the claims that he was making about the LAPD until after the killings of Monica Quan and her boyfriend.
And what was the conclusion of that investigation?
I'd imagine they came up with the usual spiel. What's the absolute craziest part is that after emptying so many rounds into trucks filled with innocent people, yes, the women won a lawsuit, but first they were offered a paltry sum of money, and then they said we're going to take it to court, and then the LAPD ponied up the dough. But not a single officer was charged with a crime. Two innocent people got shot by police officers, or at least shot at. One of them did get struck, in the arms by police bullets, and the other one was injured by all the shattering glass. And, but not a single charge was brought for that.
Now, you're the only person I've ever been able to locate to interview about this topic. Okay, and I just got lucky with you. I know there was a pastor.
Should I be worried?
What was that?
Should I be worried?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I'm kidding. How come no one? Even if you just want to give out the official police story, well, Christopher Dorner went crazy. How come there's no book? There's no movie about that?
I'm not sure why.
Right.
There's a lot of different reasons that I'm thinking of in my head, but I know that Immortal Technique, the rapper, spoke about it, and there's some other people in the rap community who spoke out about Christopher Dorner. But yes, there's not much, and the story, as I said, I remember watching it live just as it was going down. They're looking at this manhunt, and I'm just thinking, man, this is just a very flat story that I'm getting here. And the story that I was seeing online, I take that with a grain of salt, but it wasn't jiving with the story that I was seeing on the news. And so I think that the whole case, there was a man who spoke to a lot of people's frustrations with the police. He spoke to that. Even if it was in horrific ways, he spoke to that. And there's just a paltry amount of people saying, hey, this guy made sense. Even if he did so in one of the most horrific ways possible. I think we should be capable of, somebody can be, they say you can be right for the wrong reasons, or you can also be wrong for the right reasons. And I think that was Christopher Dorner. He was wrong for the right reasons. He did the wrong thing for the right reasons. And I couldn't help but wonder what would happen, what this world would look like if Dorner was alive and had become like a political activist or, an anti-police brutality journalist or something like that. With the knowledge the guy has, it could have been, with up close and personal experiences, it could have been a very different world, but that's not how it played out. So.
No, you said you heard different stories from these rappers and from on the internet. What were the other stories you were hearing?
It's more of they kind of supported his mission. I think Run the Jewels had mentioned him in one of their songs, and Immortal Technique said, rest in peace, Chris Dorner. It's kind of support for him and his mission. And I know that Dave Chappelle made comments on it too. He compared the you remember the Dallas sniper who shot at police as well, and then the Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There was another black gentleman who was they were all three ex-military black guys who were killing cops in the name of anti-police brutality.
There was another one where they alleged that some BLM member shot at some cops. I forget what town it was. And then it turned out that the woman who was in the car with the cop was having an affair with like all 10 cops that were investigating the case. And it had nothing to do with this guy. I got to go
just
back.
Like that.
Do you remember that story?
New case that happened up there in Tennessee, was it? Oh, man, the woman getting suspended with 5 other cops?
Right. That one, too, yeah. Yeah, that one, too. But this one, the one I'm thinking of, the sheriff had to know when he was coming out with his, this is BLM and I was racist against police. Everyone was dating this girl. They all had to know. It was all going back and forth. Oh, boy. So let's see here. Now, we've been talking to Joe M. Duncan, right? joemduncan.media.com. You can find this article, this actual article that we've been talking about here about Christopher Dorner. It's called, pull up here, a little faster. It is called The Real Facts About Christopher. The Real Facts.
You got it.
The Real Facts About Christopher Dorner, the Cop Killer Cop. And you can also find Joe Duncan on Twitter at Joe M. Duncan. Now, Joe, one last thing before we got a couple of minutes here. Let me see this. Let me check the time real quick. See how professional I am, right? Check the time. Okay, 46 minutes.
Take time.
On your, you have another project that you're working on here, which is sexography. What is that?
Oh, that is it is a medium publication. We have tens and tens of thousands of readers. We basically it's a sex ed publication. We achieve that goal by telling stories and giving people facts so that they can understand their health. Sexography, and then I also have a Substack that is called thescienceofsex.substack.com, and that is better understanding of human sexual health through the power of science. So no, it's not porn or it's not erotica or anything like that. It is sexual education.
Yeah, very interesting. I'm looking at it right now. It seems a lot of this is from the woman's perspective, but which I'd like to find your thing on here, see what you're writing about, because a lot of this other stuff seems really.
So I'm the editor of sexography, and I contribute my own writing occasionally. But there's hundreds of writers who write for us. So sometimes it's about 2 or 4 hours every morning. I have to go through everybody's writing and see what works and what doesn't work, so we can try to provide the best, most interesting stories to people.
Yeah, One more time. Yeah, medium.com/sexography. And right off the bat, incels are using a new tactic to recruit members, science. So this is all interesting stuff that I think my guys would love interviewing some of these people.
And then the Substack. There's a lot of free material in the Substack, so it's not all behind a paywall. There is some materials behind a paywall. I'm doing podcast episodes over there. I've got video going over there. That's thescienceofsex.substack.com, and that's where you'll find mostly my content. You can hear me, talking about a lot of the social aspects of dating these days, and what men and women are getting wrong, and how we could possibly make that area of our lives better.
And Joe, how old are you?
I am 37.
37, still a young man. Yeah, dating has changed so much, man. Like in the past 20 years, with these smartphones and these dating apps and stuff like that. It's just a whole different world, man. From when I was your age, it's just it's insane. Yeah, I don't even know.
And oh, go ahead.
No, I don't even know how people can keep up with it.
Oh yeah, no, it's something I think that if we're realistic about it, people married their families married them off. Even royalty got married off to somebody. They didn't even speak the same language a lot of the time, right? So that happened until maybe a little over 100 years ago, 120 years ago, maybe that starts not to happen anymore. So over the past century, we've had, for the first time ever, we started choosing people on how they make us feel and what it's like to be around them and whether we like them or not. So that's a very different thing for the human race, and I think that's causing a lot of the confusion. And I have launched those two, especially the Science of Sex, to try to clear up some of that confusion.
Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out, but you're so right, because they're just not, even still in some cultures today, it's arranged marriages, and here we are, in America. Oh, if one little thing, if I don't like one little thing about this woman, I'm going to swipe left at it. You got to find perfection.
Oh, yeah, man. Right. Yeah, I mean, it's like a catalog. Like dating apps is like a catalog, It's like, I don't like this one thing. Well, up next, so I'm going to go see, you know what I mean? I got, endless supply,
and even after one or two dates, you can say, this one little thing annoys me. Well, what a difference. I did a show about mail-order brides about 5 years ago, the whole culture, not present-day mail-order brides, but throughout history, especially in going west and building up the West. And she, the woman was very positive about the whole mail-order bride system of providing women to these men out there on the frontier. There were no women. They had to get women out there. The women were happy. The men were happy.
That's interesting. I mean, that's something I have not researched at all, but I would have never assumed that there would have been a very positive explanation for that happening. But hey, it just kind of shows my ignorance on the topic there.
One of my most favorite interviews, I saw her on TV. She was giving a presentation on CNN, I think it was, C-SPAN, something like that. And I says, what a fascinating topic. Let me get this woman on the show. It blew my mind away. In fact, I'll replay it this week for the audience. So, Joe Duncan, what do you want to leave us with about this Christopher Dorner story?
That I think the most important three elements right now is that racism is still alive and well. And actually, I was a victim of police brutality. I got assaulted by a cop when I was like 14, 15 years old. I was just a boy, not even a destructive boy, but I got punched by cops. So those things are real issues. That's number one. Number two, the Dorner story is complicated. There's no good guys, no bad guys. It's just. And I think that leads to number three, which is it's crucial that we learn how to hold multiple thoughts in our head at the same time. I think we have a problem today in today's world. Everybody's trying to jump for an answer right away, and sometimes there's no immediate answer. And sometimes we have to learn how to say, oh man, this was really, really horrible, but we still need to look into what's going on with these claims about police brutality and things like that. I think we can do both of those things at the same time. I don't think it has to be one or the other. So hopefully we can learn that.
Excellent way to end the show. Because you're right. As long as we have an honest investigation to turn up the facts, to search for the truth, all these things can be dealt with. Joe Duncan, you can find him on Twitter at Joe M. Duncan, Duncan, Duncan. And then it's Joe M.
I'm yo. I'm yo-yo, not a donut.
There you go. There you go. Oh, that's right. Duncan Yo-Yos. I remember that. All right. And joemduncan.media.com, .medium.com. And to also find his other stuff here, this sexography stuff looks very interesting. Medium.com, sexography. Mr. Duncan, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. You have a good day.
You too, sir. Good night.